Welcome to Work It Out with TeKay Brown Taylor. She's an HR powerhouse and certified mediator in the CSRA. Conflict is everywhere, in our homes, our day-to-day transactions, and especially in the workplace, where good HR processes and policies can fall short. Save time, save money. Don't rush to litigate, mediate. Visit brownsstonemediation.com. Now here's TeKay and Neil.
TeKay, most of the time, we connect businesses together. Everything is hunky-dory. Everybody gets along well. They try to help each other grow. But every once in a while, there is a dispute and a conflict. Is there a number one rated dispute or conflict in the workplace that you're seeing more of?
I wouldn't say number one, per se. Oftentimes, it's around personality and communication. Those are the two biggest reasons that we find where these disputes kind of are manifested. They're not managed well, and then they just grow and grow and grow. And it's usually because someone doesn't get along. There's some sort of kind of personality difference for whatever reason. And the other is because there was some miscommunication somewhere.
And is this a largely employer-employee? Would that be a good part of it, would you say?
Usually it's employee-employee. The next would be employer, meaning manager or leader and employee.
Okay.
And sometimes there are the senior leader, the leader, and the leader.
Gotcha.
We had an instance recently where a manager was a subordinate to a senior leader, and they were at odds, and that manager was getting ready to be promoted, which would become a peer of that senior leader.
That senior leader didn't like that.
Well, if as a subordinate, they had issues that weren't managed, that weren't dealt well, and now that this person is a peer, you can imagine the impact that it had on the workplace.
Right. Wow. How did you resolve it?
Well, we mediated it. And really, it was one of those mediations where, because of, again, going back to mediation works really well when we get in there early, because what had started manifesting was hurt and resentment. And so we were able to kind of deal with those issues and deal with them in a way that mediation could manage the actual issue, but then also have some way of dealing with the relationship part as coworkers, as now peers and leaders within the organization, because their conflict would start impacting the entire organization.
Makes sense. And
their boss was now being put in a position to have to take sides.
That's what I was going to ask you too. You mentioned employee-employee disputes. Do you think a supervisor or a manager likes to sit two people in the office and listen to one side and listen to the other and try to work it out, or is that something they don't like?
Well, I would say nobody likes conflict. So if I had to say and generalize, I would say no, it's not something that they like, and often not comfortable doing, managing conflict.
That's
right. Even as HR professionals, not always comfortable managing conflict. But it's a necessary requirement as a leader. And often the managers don't have the skills to do it in a very, what's the word I want to use? In a very, do it well. They're not trained or have the skills as a professional mediator would to sit down and really manage some of those issues beyond the issue itself, right? Meaning the needs and the interests and what do both sides want or trying to get out of this. And so as a manager, there's issues that get involved with the power dynamics because now I'm your manager and I'm this person's manager. And so now we have to think about what I do and say and how that's going to be perceived. So that's the great thing of having an outside third party come in and do that, because we don't have to worry about the power dynamics. We can, keep some of those other things open to be able to deal with the issue head on and not have to worry about all that secondary stuff that gets in the way.
We're continuing with TeKay Brown-Taylor, Brownstone Mediation. And in other segments, when you've talked before, you've mentioned that a husband may be on one side of the table, a wife on the other, and then you as the mediator. So how would you do it when there's two employees? Is it just the two employees, or is there a representative from the company there as well?
It could be, but we get all that sorted out in the beginning. Often, my preference and recommendation is that it's just the employees. Even if they have attorneys. Your attorneys are available to you, but because we are professional and we are amazing at what we do, if you allow us with these two individuals to do the work, and if they need to consult with their attorney or their third party representative, they're more than welcome and we're happy to support that. But often the more individuals and parties that are around the table, the more challenging it is to manage the dynamics of the room. And so there's just more work to be done in that atmosphere, but it can be done. But we will always push to just have the parties who are at odds with each other to be at the table. Now, what we do often do is before going into a mediation, we will meet with the senior leader, the frontline manager, and whoever, and have a meeting, a pre-mediation meeting, so that we can talk about goals, talk about the issues, and all of those things going into the mediation. But we try to stick with the parties around the table.
Fair enough. And when we come back, we're going to elevate our conversation between the two leaders of a company who are partners. Very interesting dynamic for sure. We'll be right back after this message on how you can reach TeKay. We'll see you in just a few.
You're listening to Work It Out with TeKay Brown-Taylor from Brownstone Mediation Services. Family, business, your workplace. What is conflict costing you? Visit brownstonemediation.com to see how you can find a resolution and maybe even a reconciliation of a broken relationship. That's brownstonemediation.com.
Well, you may work at a company in which there are a couple of bosses, big bosses that are owners, sometimes co-owners. We're with TeKay Brown-Taylor. When you do mediation involving partners, are they typically 50-50 partners?
Yes, I would say. We don't really get into the background of who
Percentages
owns
and
right.
Okay.
We meet them where they are.
Okay.
Because we want to eliminate the power difference in dynamic.
Okay.
You're equal when you come to the table. So if it's business owners, partners within an organization, like we recently had where there was a group of partners in an organization.
They each had a certain amount of shares.
And we didn't get into the dynamics, who own how much,
wow.
or who owns the most, and we're not interested in that unless it's relevant to the mediation.
Yeah.
Right? They have some sort of agreement, operation agreement, who's going to be the final decision maker. Unless that's relevant to the mediation, we're not interested in it, because we want to really remove that, because you can't have an open and transparent conversation if someone is perceived as in control.
Yeah. That's fair enough. What are some of the typical disagreements that partners may have that would lead to mediation?
Often it is, I have a vision for the way the business should go that differs from the person that I was so happy to be in business with, who now has an entirely different vision. That's almost always is that we started this business to do XYZ, and now 2 years, 5 years, 10 years later, we've been running this business almost 30 years, and we're not growing, and we're not growing because I think we're not growing because of this reason, and the other partner thinks, we're doing just fine. So that's usually because the vision has changed.
Interesting. Can you think of any over the last several years positive outcomes when the honeymoon's over and the two partners come to the table with you?
Absolutely. And that goes back to preserving a relationship. Because usually when you've been in a disagreement, and often when they come to us, it's the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th hour.
BDR, bitterness dispute resolution.
Bitterness dispute resolution, that is a fact. And so there's a lot of hurt and a lot of resentment and a lot of stuck stories. So we have to spend a lot of time getting them out of that stuck story. And so, yes, we have seen positive success when we can preserve the relationship. The two parties can walk away and maybe still not wanting to stay in business, but they respect each other for it.
Has there ever been a recommendation in which you say, maybe one partner should buy the other one out?
Yes, very much so. That is a strategy. That is a potential resolution to discuss. Are you willing to sell? And that's even with, we're talking about business, but even with the family. I see that a lot in the family, is that we have this estate, we have this property, we have this piece of asset that we are now in disagreement. My vision for it is of use is different. One person doesn't want to be involved in it any longer. Are you open to selling? So that is certainly always something that is discussable at the mediation table.
Excellent. Well, when we come back, we'll talk a little bit, I guess, down to the granular level. When a business owner has a dispute with a customer, they say the customer is always right, but not always, I guess. Or maybe you have a supplier and things aren't working out well. TeKay Brown Taylor can help and can make perhaps some recommendations or suggestions, and we'll delve into that when we come right back.
You're listening to Work It Out with TeKay Brown Taylor from Brownstone Mediation Services. Family, business, your workplace. What is conflict costing you? Visit brownstonemediation.com to see how you can find a resolution and maybe even a reconciliation of a broken relationship. That's brownstonemediation.com.
TeKay, is the customer always right?
I would like to say yes
Okay.
and no.
All right, that's fair.
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense, making the customer feel valued, appreciated, because you want to maintain business. At the end of the day, you want them to stay a customer if they're a good customer, right? But no, in the sense of there's a way things should be handled, and because you always have or should have a good reason or a good way of doing business, and a customer understand that. So I think it's fair as a business owner is to have processes and policies or in place, but set that expectation up early, right? And there can be a disagreement with the customer. So how you handle that situation, I think, is really important in terms of whether a customer is right and or is not accurate in the way an issue is managed.
Where do you think the log jam happens between a business owner and a customer that would lead them coming to your door for mediation?
Well, because a service was not rendered to, going back to what I shared a moment ago, is expectation to the level of service that was expected. And what often makes it an issue that didn't have to be as bad of an issue is how, again, is how I shared how it is handled. So if it's mishandled, then that just expounds the issue. What was forgivable, or what was the customer was upset and not happy about it and able to walk away and return and still be a customer, that often is no longer able to happen if it's not handled well.
Again, that's preserving the relationship.
Preserving the relationship.
A business relationship. Does it always involve money as a dispute between a business owner and a customer?
Not always. It goes back to expectations. I will say often it is maybe surrounding money with a refund for a service.
Okay.
That is one of the options, and that is usually discussable. But oftentimes it is about how I was handled. Like, I wasn't communicated too well. I wasn't valued as a customer. You know, I purchased, I supported your business, and this is the treatment I received. And so when you start talking about all those different things, then people get stuck on the issue. They get stuck on their position. It was not right, and I want to be refunded, or I want to go say something bad about you. I want to be heard.
Oh, wow.
So that's what I mean by not handling it well is sometimes the customer just want to be heard.
Not to put you on the spot, but can you think of a situation over the years where at the end of the day they shook hands and they came to some agreement, and what was it maybe about? And
yeah, so I would say majority of the time they do walk away with a see you later, or I'm willing to be business partners, and even sometimes an apology. I don't request that. I don't, encourage, but I would say maybe you can consider, and it's really up to the parties, but often there is, because it's usually about miscommunication. Oftentimes it really is about, I expected this to be delivered in this way. It was not. And there may be a justification, there may not be a justification, but without talking and getting beyond the issue that we're batting heads over, or now the owner, supplier, the store, whatever it may be, is not, or being immovable, being not being agreeable because of how the customer reacted and behaved. But again, the customer reacted and behaved because they felt they weren't handled well. They weren't treated nice, if you will.
The last relationship with business is business owner and vendor or supplier. What are the typical disputes that those two sides are in?
Well, when you think about business owners, and I'm pretty sure your audience is made up of business owners, whether it's a supplier, a contractor, manufacturer, and even an employee. When you think about that, those all involve people. And there's usually a contract or there's an agreement. And so when you involve people in contracts and agreement, there's inevitably going to be conflict and disagreement about something. When it's not managed well, then it becomes a dispute. It could be the dispute on how I read the contract, because we were happy when we got and signed the contract, so we weren't as intentional with reading through it. And so when the dispute happens, is how I'm reading that clause is different than how it was intended to be, or what it actually means. So usually that's what it is that contract letter agreement. If there's some the delivery on what my expectation of what that service is supposed to be is not being, or was not what I expected.
Fair enough. We're continuing with TeKay Brown-Taylor in the last few minutes of Let's Work It Out, and we're talking about suppliers and vendors and business owners. And I've asked you this before about other disputes with customers. Does it often come down to service or money when you see disputes?
Well, we live in a very litigious place now. We are in a litigious place. Like, civility is just like fleeting by the minute.
Right.
And so sometimes I feel people just want to argue and fight and be in conflict. But that being said, I do, and I say that, and I would think that would lean towards money. But I do think that's not often the case. It is because of service, right? Someone's not getting something that they expect or they need. I often say conflict is the direct result of an unmet need. And so I want to say, just because of where we are, we live in litigious, we have all these court shows, people just immediately, when they're unhappy or unsatisfied, they want to go have recourse, and recourse says $. But the reality is, when we really spend the time to pump brakes and really help them, with the skills and the capacity to manage the conflict, we will understand it's because a need is not being met.
Fair enough. Well, TeKay means business, and she helps businesses in the CSRA, whether it be an employee situation, an employee conflict, to partners that maybe have a challenge, or multiple shareholders within a company, whether it be the business owner and the customer, or the business owner and the vendor. All of those dynamics and financial arrangements
Yeah.
and communication issues are things that TeKay works with. So think about, I suppose, if
And then-
you're in conflict.
One that we get to see a lot of
Mm-hmm.
is business owner to business owner.
Oh,
We have a lot of shared spaces, in buildings,
right.
or they have commercial property and you're not maintaining your property or using it the way I think you should as the person that's next door.
Yeah.
And so we see a lot of business owner to business owner disputes over a commercial issue, something that's in regards to their property.
Yeah.
And the other business owner, they believe is being unreasonable. Oftentimes, the truth of the matter is egos are in the way, I find. But of
Yeah.
course, I would never tell them that.
Sure.
But usually, we see more of the business owner and business owner, people who both are owners in a business in conflict or dispute over something running of how they run their business, which is
Fascinating.
interesting.
Yeah.
It is very much.
Wow. Learn something new all the time. Stick around because our man with the golden pipes, the voice guy, is going to give you all the information to get in touch with TeKay. Consultation doesn't cost you any money. She'll kind of see whether there's an opportunity for you to mediate. Don't litigate, mediate.
Don't litigate, mediate.
Excellent. We'll look forward to seeing you next time, and thank you again what you do for the community.
Thank you, Neil. I appreciate you.
You've been listening to Work It Out with TeKay Brown Taylor from Brownstone Mediation Services. She's an HR powerhouse and certified mediator in the CSRA, specializing in conflict resolution with family, business, workplace issues, and small claims disputes. Remember, save time, save money. Don't rush to litigate, mediate. Visit brownstonemediation.com.